The golden lights of the Manhattan Liberty Foundation Gala gleamed like stars inside the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble. Celebrities, politicians, and media moguls glided across the floor in $1,000 gowns and custom tuxedos. Meghan Markle was the keynote speaker, brought in to talk about the modern female journey through adversity. She stood center stage, radiant in a white satin dress, her voice elegant and composed as she said, "We all struggle, but not everyone understands what it means to be silenced, erased, or misunderstood." Her words landed gently until her tone sharpened. And I look at some women in this room. Some of them speak boldly without knowing what pain is. They've never faced the weight of royalty, the fire of headlines, or the loneliness of real rejection. They don't understand struggle. They inherited comfort. The crowd hummed. Soft applause rippled. But at one corner table near the edge of the stage, Karoline Leavitt sat frozen. Her eyes locked on Meghan. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers curled slowly around her glass of water. She knew those words were about her. She had been invited last minute, as a political balance to the event. She didn't even want to come, but Trump's team insisted. Appear, be seen, make no waves. That was the plan. But now, with half the room glancing at her sideways, whispering, smirking, she knew the plan had just changed. Backstage, 10 minutes later, Karoline stepped into a narrow hallway, heels clicking fast. Her assistant tried to speak, but she raised her hand. "She said I don't know struggle?" Karoline's voice was low, controlled rage. "I've had death threats for holding a microphone. I've buried friends who overdosed while Meghan gave interviews about paparazzi." A stage manager passed by. "You're still scheduled to speak in 15. 5 minutes Q&A. Karoline smiled coldly. "Perfect." Back inside, Meghan was already seated in the front row, calm and glowing. She had no idea what was coming. The announcer's voice echoed through the room. "Please welcome White House Press Secretary, Karoline Leavitt." The lights shifted, the room hushed, and Karoline stepped into the spotlight, not as a politician, but as a woman ready to rewrite the script. Karoline walked to the podium with deliberate poise, her yellow blazer sharp against the deep navy backdrop. A small silver cross shimmered just above her collarbone, catching the light like a quiet warning. She looked out over the room, not down at notes, not at the teleprompter, but straight into the eyes of her audience, and then, directly at Meghan Markle. "Before I begin, I need to address something said earlier tonight," she began, her voice even, but firm. "It was suggested, publicly, that some women don't understand struggle, that speaking boldly without pain is somehow invalid." She let the silence stretch. Then her tone shifted, cooler, sharper. "Let me tell you what struggle looks like." The room leaned in. Even Meghan shifted slightly in her seat. "Struggle is growing up in a New Hampshire town where your father works 2 jobs and your mother skips dinner so you can eat. Struggle is getting screamed at outside your dorm room because of who you interned for. Struggle is losing friends, not to gossip columns, but to fentanyl. It's walking into rooms where people laugh at your beliefs before you open your mouth. It's being told to smile more, no, and talk less. It's getting called a puppet, a token, or a threat, depending on the day." The crowd was silent now. Cameras hovered. Phones came up. Even the event coordinator stood frozen in the wings. "So no, Meghan, I haven't worn a tiara. I've never had a Netflix deal. But don't stand there and say I don't understand pain just because my struggle didn't make headlines in Vogue." Whispers swept the front rows. Meghan's smile had tightened. One of her aides leaned in, whispering urgently. But Karoline wasn't finished. "I've spent my 20s being told that young conservative women should sit still, be nice, and wait their turn, and I've rejected all of it, because I wasn't raised for comfort. I was raised for challenge." A wave of low applause rippled, tentative at first. But it grew. "So if you want to talk about being silenced, misunderstood, or erased, I suggest you stop looking at the crown on your head and start looking at the boots on the ground." The ballroom burst. Applause. Gasps. Some stood, Some just stared. And for the first time that night, Meghan looked down. Backstage, the organizer clutched his headset. "She went off script," one assistant whispered. "No," he replied. "She just rewrote it." As Karoline walked off the stage, her heels steady and her head high, the energy in the room was electric. It wasn't just applause, it was a shift. Something had landed, something raw, real, and Meghan Markle felt it. She sat frozen, arms folded tightly over her lap. Her trademark smile had faded to something more calculated, her eyes scanning the crowd as people whispered, pointed, recorded. Her team huddled around her, trying to shield her from the growing storm of side eyes and murmurs. One advisor whispered, "We need to get ahead of this." The tone, the room, it flipped. Meghan responded quietly but clipped. "She hijacked my message with trauma bait." But the truth was harder to face. Karoline hadn't hijacked anything. She just hit something Meghan didn't expect: authenticity. By the time Karoline reached the lobby, her phone was already buzzing. Texts, missed calls, and media alerts. A Fox News producer, "You free for Hannity tonight?" A friend from high school, "You just destroyed royalty on stage. Are you okay?" A DM from a stranger, "You said what needed to be said. Thank you." Karoline clapback, "You don't unstruggle." Boots not crowns. They were all climbing on X. Dozens of variations, trending within minutes. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, a journalist approached Meghan with her mic up. "Mrs. Markle, do you have a response to Karoline Leavitt's comments tonight?" Meghan flashed a tight smile. "Everyone's entitled to their truth," she said sweetly. "But pain isn't a contest, and I stand by what I said." But the words rang hollow, even to her own ears. The reporter didn't press. She didn't need to. The internet was already doing the talking. That night, Karoline sat in a quiet car, her team debriefing in whispers. But she wasn't gloating. Her fingers fidgeted with the cross around her neck, her mind racing. "You okay?" her assistant asked. Karoline looked out the window, voice quiet. "It wasn't about her. It was about us. The women like me who never get to speak up without being told we're angry or entitled." Then she glanced at her phone again. An unread message from someone she hadn't seen in years. "My sister watched your speech." She cried. She said for the first time she felt seen. Karoline exhaled, not out of pride, but because finally someone had cracked the narrative. By 9 p.m., the Liberty Foundation Gala was no longer trending for its cause. It was trending for one thing: the clash. Clips of Karoline's fiery speech flooded X, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok. One edit looped her line: "I wasn't raised for comfort. I was raised for challenge." Over booming orchestral music, another split-screened Meghan's original jab with Karoline's unfiltered response. "Karoline vs. Meghan. Not your narrative. Boots on the ground. Royal ego." They weren't just hashtags, they were sides in a culture war. Influencers, politicians, college students, even late-night comedians dove in. Ben Shapiro posted, "Karoline Leavitt just did what most conservatives are too afraid to do. She told the truth with backbone." AOC, on the other hand, tweeted, "Pain isn't a competition. Some people really need a humility check." Even those outside politics weighed in. A female veteran tweeted, "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Karoline's words, they hit home." But Meghan wasn't retreating. Not yet. She appeared on a surprise live stream with a friendly host on a progressive media outlet. Soft lighting, calm background music. "I think we all need to be more mindful of how we frame our stories," she said, her tone poised but sharper than usual. "I shared my experience and it was twisted into a personal attack. But I've come to expect that." The host nodded sympathetically. "Do you think it was intentional?" Meghan smiled, small, cold. "Let's just say, some people make careers out of victimhood wrapped in patriotism." The message was clear, subtle but sharp. She was painting Karoline as a media manipulator, a woman who weaponized her hardships to score political points. Karoline watched the live stream in silence from her living room, her husband sitting beside her. "She's not backing down," he muttered. "She's trying to flip it again. Make you the aggressor." Karoline didn't blink. She was already typing. Her post went live seconds later. Struggle doesn't come with a spotlight or a title. It's lived quietly by millions of Americans who never get a Netflix special. I spoke for them. I always will. Not backing down. Within minutes, it had 80,000 likes. Meanwhile, producers from CNN and Fox were calling. Podcasters, bookers, college campus event coordinators. Everyone wanted to hear from the girl who clapped back at royalty. And Karoline? She wasn't just ready. She was planning her next move. 2 days after the gala, the media frenzy hadn't slowed. It had evolved. What started as a moment on stage was now a national conversation. Morning shows debated it. Podcasts broke it down minute by minute. Even university professors were analyzing Karoline's rhetorical framing versus Meghan's social capital. But in a corner of Karoline's office, her chief researcher was quietly working on something else. Digging. "You might want to see this," she said, pushing a laptop toward Karoline. On the screen played a 2013 interview, an obscure sit-down Meghan had done before marrying Prince Harry. In it, the then-actress spoke about Hollywood, image, and pressure. "I didn't grow up in poverty," Meghan said, smiling. "I went to private schools. My parents worked hard to give me a good life. I've always been grateful for that." Karoline watched the clip in silence. Then again. Then again. "She said it herself," she whispered. "So why 10 years later is she rewriting the story like she clawed her way out of the gutter?" Later that night, Karoline appeared on America Unfiltered, a primetime show with millions of viewers. The host leaned in. "Karoline, your words at the gala struck a nerve. Meghan Markle responded, said you twisted her story. What's your response?" Karoline didn't flinch. "I don't need to twist anything. She did that herself." She gestured to the monitor beside her. "Let's play something from Meghan, in her own words." The 2013 clip rolled. Silence. Then Karoline turned back to the camera. "There's nothing wrong with having privilege. But there is something wrong with pretending you've suffered more than the people you're trying to lecture. Meghan Markle called me privileged, but I've spent more nights wondering how to pay rent than she ever has. I don't need a crown. I have a conscience." The host blinked. "Wow." Social media erupted again. She played, the tape, she privilege check, she Karoline strikes back, truth before titles. Back in California, Meghan stared at the screen, her PR team in chaos. "Why would she do that?" one aide asked. Meghan's jaw clenched. "Because I underestimated her." By the end of the week, the story had evolved from a headline clash to a full-scale media war. Not just viral videos, but editorials, think pieces, late-night jokes, and behind it all, strategy. Meghan Markle's team quietly activated their media contacts. Major outlets began publishing character profiles on Karoline Leavitt. One article headline read, "The press secretary who yells louder than she listens." Another, "Karoline Leavitt, voice of the far right, or just another ambitious politico?" Even daytime talk shows joined in. One host smirked. "Karoline's idea of struggle is probably not getting her almond milk fast enough." It was calculated. It was sharp. It was war. But Karoline wasn't alone anymore. Support was pouring in from unexpected places. A retired schoolteacher from Wisconsin posted a video that went viral. "I raised 3 kids alone. I don't have a fancy title. But when Karoline spoke at that gala, I felt like someone finally saw me." Veterans, nurses, factory workers, stay-at-home moms, they flooded comment sections, forums, even local news call-ins. And then came a surprise. Tulsi Gabbard, the independent voice once scorned by both parties, went live on her podcast. Whether you agree with Karoline Leavitt or not, she represents something bigger. She's disrupting a system that chooses its heroes based on spotlight, not sacrifice. And that's exactly why they're trying to shut her up. Within an hour, Karoline's team clipped the moment, posted it, let it burn. Meanwhile, inside Meghan's Montecito estate, her inner circle was tense. "We're losing the middle," one advisor warned. "This is no longer just right versus left. People are responding emotionally." Meghan folded her arms. "Then we remind them who she is. Turn the narrative back toward extremism. Make it about division." Back at the White House, Karoline sat with her husband, reviewing a new dossier, a folder marked Fall 2021, Meghan's Foundation Financial Controversy, not yet public. Her husband raised an eyebrow. "You're really going there?" Karoline stared at the folder for a long time, then looked up. "She wants to question my story? Then maybe it's time I told hers." 3 days later, a headline exploded across social media. Exclusive: Meghan's Foundation under scrutiny for misallocated funds. It was subtle at first, an independent outlet, mid-tier reach, but the headline spread like wildfire. Within hours, Fox News picked it up. Then, the Daily Wire. Then, a European outlet translated it into German. By morning, the story had crossed the Atlantic. The source? An anonymous whistleblower. But Karoline knew exactly who had opened that folder. And exactly why. Inside Meghan's PR war room, it was meltdown mode. Why is this coming out now? It's an old audit. This is calculated. They're tying it to the gala backlash. Meghan was silent, scrolling through her feed, watching herself trend, not for a documentary premiere or a women's summit, but for a funding controversy no one had remembered until now. "She's playing dirty," Meghan muttered. "She's using politics to bury me." Her team rushed to build a response, but the court of public opinion was already in session. Meanwhile, Karoline appeared on the Megyn Kelly show. She didn't directly reference the leak. She didn't need to. Instead, she smiled, calm and calculated. When people build their brand on victimhood, they don't like to be questioned. But struggle doesn't excuse hypocrisy. I've never claimed to be perfect, but I've never asked the world to worship me either. Meghan leaned in. "You're not just defending yourself anymore, are you?" Karoline's eyes didn't flinch. I'm defending the people who were told their pain doesn't count. And I'm making it clear. No one owns the right to be believed more than anyone else. Then came the twist. A leaked email. Not from Karoline. From a former staffer on Meghan's own team. The subject line? "We crafted the narrative. It was never her full truth. Screenshots posted anonymously. Verified later. Authentic." The message was clear. Meghan's brand wasn't just built on struggle. It had been polished, edited, and staged. Now, it wasn't just Karoline versus Meghan. It was truth versus image, and Karoline was winning. Saturday night, Washington, D.C. Karoline Leavitt stood backstage at the Voices of America Summit, an event typically dominated by senators, journalists, and authors. But tonight, it was different. The crowd wasn't buzzing for a policy speech. They were waiting to hear from the woman who had silenced Meghan Markle. Not with scandal, but with story. Her story. The host stepped to the mic. She's been called many things. Young, fierce, divisive, brave. But tonight she's not here to settle scores. She's here because millions saw themselves in her voice. Applause. Then, silence. Karoline stepped onto the stage, her heels clicking, her yellow blazer glowing under the lights. She smiled briefly, then began. "You've heard a lot lately, about fame, about pain, about truth, and who's allowed to tell it." She paused, letting her voice settle like weight in the room. "But this isn't about a duchess and a press secretary anymore. It's about a question. Who owns struggle? And the answer is simple: no one does. Because pain doesn't ask your name, and truth doesn't need a brand." The audience sat breathless. I didn't grow up behind palace gates. I grew up hearing you can't afford it. I didn't have a stylist. I had a mom who made church dresses last 2 years. And when I spoke up, I wasn't called brave. I was called loud, unqualified, a marionetta. She took a slow breath. But I kept speaking, Not because I wanted the spotlight, but because I knew millions of Americans were being told their pain wasn't stylish enough to matter. The audience broke into applause. Meanwhile, in Montecito, Meghan sat with her phone turned face down, headlines flickering on the TV screen. Karoline Leavitt addresses America with final word on Markle clash. Markle retreats from media, while press secretary takes the stage. Her advisor spoke quietly. We should issue something. Anything. But Meghan shook her head. She's too quick now. Everything I say will look like damage control. And just like that, the silence was her answer. Back on stage, Karoline looked straight into the camera. This was never about being right. It was about being real. And if that makes me the enemy of royalty, fame, and comfort, so be it. Because I was raised for something harder. I was raised to stand. The crowd rose. Applause thundered. Karoline nodded once. The moment was hers. The clip of Karoline's summit speech had already racked up 7.2 million views in 36 hours. It wasn't just viral, it was becoming historic. Political commentators now called it the most effective counterpunch to cultural elitism in years. Late-night monologues couldn't avoid it. Editorials, both conservative and liberal, debated it. But in the hills of Montecito, Meghan Markle was staring at an unexpected email. Subject: exclusive live dialogue. Karoline and Meghan. Primetime slot reserved. It was from a major network. They weren't asking for separate interviews. They wanted one thing: a live, unedited face-to-face. They want us on the same stage? Meghan asked, her voice low. Her publicist nodded. They say the nation is watching. And frankly, they're right. You either sit this out and let Karoline control the narrative, or you walk into the fire and reclaim it. Meghan leaned back, conflicted. She hated what Karoline represented, defiance without apology. But deep down, she also knew something else. Karoline had done what she always feared most, made her look rehearsed. What's the angle? She asked. No scripts, no teleprompters, just you and her. Live. Prime time. Unfiltered. Meghan hesitated, then looked out the window and whispered, Fine. Let's see if she still stands when the lights get brighter. Meanwhile, in Washington, Karoline's team stared at the same offer. She didn't hesitate. Accept it, she said flatly. Her aide looked up. Just like that? Karoline nodded. I'm not afraid of Meghan, and I'm definitely not afraid of the truth. As the promo trailer aired later that night, the voiceover said it all. This Friday night, 2 women, 1 stage, no scripts, no filter. Karoline Leavitt, Meghan Markle, 1 final conversation. America held its breath, and both women prepared, not for a debate, but for a reckoning. Friday, 8 p.m., Eastern Standard Time. Every major network aired the same thing. A black screen, 1 sentence faded in. What does struggle mean, and who gets to speak for it? Then, applause. The studio lights came up. A sleek, modern stage. 2 chairs, no podiums, no barriers. On the left sat Meghan Markle, calm, poised, dressed in pale gray silk, every detail measured. On the right, Karoline Leavitt, yellow blazer, hair pulled back, a silver cross glinting on her collarbone. The host nodded. Let's begin where it started. Meghan took the first shot. I never said Karoline's story wasn't valid. I only shared my truth, and I was met with judgment, not empathy. Karoline's expression didn't change. She waited, then spoke. I didn't attack your story, Meghan. I questioned why you claimed a monopoly on suffering. She turned to the audience. America is full of people with no spotlight, no platform, just pain. And they're tired of being told they didn't earn the right to speak about it. Applause erupted. Meghan's voice cooled. With all due respect, your brand is built on defiance. Mine is built on healing. Karoline blinked once. Healing doesn't come from staged grief and Netflix deals. It comes from honesty, especially the kind that's not wrapped in PR teams. gasps in the audience. The moderator leaned forward. "Meghan, would you like to respond?" Meghan smiled, tight and thin. "You can mock my story, Karoline, but it reached people, millions, and that's more than shouting ever did." Karoline looked directly at her. "It reached people because it was packaged. Mine resonated because it was real." A pause. "I didn't have a palace. I had a paycheck that barely cleared rent. But I stood, and that's what terrified you." The crowd was on its feet. "And then," Meghan slipped. "You wouldn't last one day in my world," she hissed, eyes narrowing. Karoline leaned in, voice low, piercing. "And you wouldn't survive 1 year in mine." Silence. "You said I don't understand struggle. But struggle isn't designer labels with tabloid stress. It's burying your dad and still showing up to work. It's paying off student loans while being mocked on national TV. It's speaking for millions who'll never get a microphone." The audience thundered. Meghan looked stunned. For the first time, she had no comeback. The next morning, number Karoline 1 was trending worldwide. Even Meghan's former fans admitted she was outmaneuvered. A New York Times op-ed read, "Karoline Leavitt didn't just win a debate. She reclaimed the right to tell stories that don't sell headlines." Karoline walked out of the studio. No entourage, no press handler. Her husband was waiting by the car. He smiled. "You did it." She shrugged, eyes calm. "I didn't do it to win. I did it to be heard." And this time, everyone listened. Sometimes a microphone isn't power. The truth behind it is. Tonight, we didn't just witness a clash between two women. We witnessed the unraveling of assumptions about privilege, about pain, and about who gets to speak. Karoline Leavitt didn't come from royalty. She came from reality, and in a world full of noise, she reminded us that authentic voices still cut through. Whether you stood with Meghan or Karoline tonight, one thing is clear. Struggle isn't defined by status, and truth doesn't ask for permission. At Surprising Stories, we bring you the moments when everything shifts, when the underdog stands up, when the expected loses. Don't forget to subscribe because this is just one of many battles. And the next one might change the narrative all over again. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and never stop questioning who holds the mic.